It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Taking a tour of where your finances can go? Good plan. See how Northwestern Mutual's approach to financial planning is designed for your goals. Goals like protecting loved ones, growing investments, and planning for retirement. With our interactive tour, you'll discover how growth and protection work together to help make your dreams a reality. See what goes into a good financial plan at northwesternmutual.com/tour. The Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Happy Friday, everybody. We did it. Another week of fantasy hockey dominance. We hope, and we're headed into the weekend all kinds of fired up to talk about some latest injury news out of the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the top three teams that need to make a move. They might need a shakeup. They might need a little help on the blue line. We're going to break it all down because it's going to have fantasy impacts. Thank you for joining us. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And we are all kinds of fired up for the Friday edition, breaking down some of the top news from around the NHL, as always, including what three teams need to make a move. There's a lot of squad steel on the precipice of either something really special or perhaps something really bad. Either way, you and I have some squads to look at because I think also, most importantly, these teams are likely to make moves still, and that will have fantasy implications. Also, speaking of which, Shea Theodore out week to week. This is a beast mode blue line piece steal. He is key to the Vegas Golden Knights' success. So let's talk a little bit about that after the top of the show. And of course, Friday bets. You have a same game parlay. I'm hyped to share that bad boy out. Obviously, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. And that's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Steele, I got it all out there. I don't know how many times I said each. It could be 13. But we're ready to go here, baby. And honestly, these weeks are starting to stack up in the NHL. And if you're paying attention to the experts out there, don't even listen to Steele and I, which is also a really good idea. This is one of those positions, points in the schedules, where GMs now know what they're working with. That's why Chris Johnson has his trade bait board up. We're going to talk about that as well, Steele. Right over to you, my brother. You know that's what we do here because Shea Theodore week to week, GMs out there are going to have to fill a hole. And Vegas, a really, really good start. You know things can happen and injuries tend to pile up in a hurry. What's your take on this situation? Because I know you really do love this player.
I love this player a lot. I've talked about him a lot over the summertime heading into this season. I thought he was going to have a monster year, and so far he's lived up to my expectations.
Yeah.
But it's a significant injury. He's out week to week. He just underwent upper body surgery to fix whatever it is. The details of the actual injury aren't quite out yet. But again, I love this player. I love what he brings to the game, and he's had a monster beginning of the season. 4 goals, 18 points in 20 games. And it's no coincidence Vegas has lost their last 3 games with Shea Theodore out the last 3 games dealing with this injury. His ability to join the rush, make it an odd man advantage for his team, weave his way through into the middle of the slot, make plays, whether he's shooting the puck on net or making some passes to facilitate his teammates. He pretty much does it all, in my opinion. He's one of those underrated defensemen that I always look forward to drafting. And it's just incredible the way that he plays. He's 8th amongst defensemen right now with points again at 18 points in 20 games. He's 10th amongst defensemen with 52 shots on net in the league right now. Again, he's such a crucial part to the Vegas Golden Knights organization and a crucial part to GMs out there who drafted this player or traded for him. And with this significant injury, he's most likely not going to be back until the later stages of December, probably over after Christmas, if it's after going this surgery. So you got to look to the waiver wire to fill a replacement in the meantime. I've already got a couple in mind. Owen Power at 40% right now. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's at 35%. There's a few good defensemen out there that can fill in fill in that spot. Obviously not going to bring as much as that Theodore does, but there are a few defensemen out there that the two that I just mentioned that could be that could replace him and make some good fits.
Most definitely, Steele. And I think also just kudos due to this Vegas Golden Knights team. We're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks, but they're only 1 point up on that Canucks team now all of a sudden. So you and I have talked a lot about windows for winning, margins for error as such. Yeah, we're just past the quarter pole in the NHL season, but you mentioned the 3-game losing streak from Vegas, and all of a sudden there's some chinks in the armor. Shea Theodore, aside from fantasy that you totally covered very nicely, he is that leader in that dressing room that I think the Vegas Golden Knights have about 9 of them somehow. The Alex Petrangelos of the world, they've got all kinds of good characters, Mark Stone. These guys are warriors, and now they're winners too. And you can't help but, again, this is another one of those things that don't exactly show up in fantasy, but you love having a piece of winners. And Shea Theodore is that cog. You shouted him out heavily coming into the season. He's doing it at both ends of the ice. Keep your eyes peeled, though, because perhaps these are the situations. If he comes back, prolonged absence, maybe it takes a little bit longer. Maybe Vegas struggles. Maybe he comes back and he starts to maybe eat less minutes. Lots of maybes I'm throwing out there, Steele. Lots of question marks, but all of them pertain to your fantasy success. So don't get complacent with someone that's obviously both important to fantasy GM success and to his teams on the ice. Not too much other takeaway there, Steele. He should be back soon. We just want to come on here and highlight a major injury to a key fantasy piece when it happens so you guys know what's going on, even though there isn't a ton of information other than upper body week to week, and we should just keep our eye on it. We're keeping an eye on this next topic, though, Steele. The top 3 teams that need to make a trade. And yeah, of course, top 3, this is a bit of a subjective list, but I think the takeaway here is, and I hope that you agree with me when I kick this off with the Toronto Maple Leafs, is certain teams have glaring issues that they need to address. And in Toronto, it's obviously the blue line. Mark Giordano just celebrated his 58th birthday, and now he's out week to week. You know me, and I joke about Giordano's birthday. That's a long-running joke on the show for anyone newly listening. But Mark Giordano is obviously up there in age and a lot of miles on the body. We're not talking about him for fantasy. We're talking about this now placing more need on Brad Treliving to be going out there and taking a look at some of these names on the top of this list. And for YouTubers out there, you're going to see the list. If you're out there on Spotify or Apple listening, we can run through it very quickly, but it's Chris Johnson's from The Athletic, and the top 5 on this trade target list are Noah Hanifin, Elias Lindholm, Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov. Then it's Sean Walker, Ilya Labushkin, Jake Allen, Sam Montembeault, Morgan Frost, and Tony DeAngelo. Like I just said, hit YouTube or check out Chris Johnson for that full list. Steele, what do you think about the list? But in terms of Toronto, we know they were already after a D-man. We know the blue line has been thin. They're letting up way more shots than they were last year. The penalty kill is reeling. They need to be a lot better there. We know the offense on power play is elite. I'm going to leave it at this and stop talking. They need help on the blue line, and I really do think they need to shake up their defensive game all around because Joseph Woll can't bail them out all season long and them expect to last any kind of success.
Well, it goes straight into my first team that I want to talk about, the Calgary Flames. Obviously,
there you go.
A very significant one. 4 of the top 5 on that top 10 list are Calgary Flame players, and it goes hand in hand with you talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs because clearly there's been some conversations. Obviously, there's a connection there with Brad Treliving being the former GM of the Calgary Flames, so maybe there's something that he can get done in facilitating a trade for a defenseman. And that's something the Calgary Flames need to look into. You've already made aware to the entire NHL that you're a fire sale. You know, it's a 2-for-1 half off special. They're going to be sending people away in the upcoming season before the season's done and before the trade deadline. A lot of them coming from the blue line, and that's exactly what the Maple Leafs need right now. We've talked a lot about potentially trying to go for Nikita Zadorov. They need a big defenseman who's actually a decent skater, can jump up in the play. He's got a few goals under the belt this season. He's a big body that can lay the hits and actually protect his teammates out there when someone goes after another player. So those two teams go hand in hand, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Calgary Flames. But on the Calgary Flames side of things, they need to acquire some depth scoring. They need to acquire some other players up front to help these pieces that they've invested in long-term. Jonathan Huberdeau, Mackenzie Weegar, obviously on the back end, Jacob Markstrom.
They
need Nazem Kadri as well. So maybe the Calgary Flames and Toronto Maple Leafs, it might be poor to say this, but maybe the Leafs have to give up one of their young players. Again, I'm just going to throw out Nick Robertson or potentially Matthew Knies. I'm not saying that's going to happen or I want it to happen, but in order to really gain some help on the blue line and solidify a top blue line in the NHL, you might have to give up one of those young pieces in order to acquire one of those defensemen.
This has also been serious rumors. Usually where there's smoke, there's fire. So that's why we have to have both of these teams on there for differing reasons, because I think the Calgary Flames, and we're going to get to break here in a second, talk about a few more teams and wrap with bets, keeping today short and sweet. But I think what has to be said is what's changed over the last couple of weeks is the Calgary Flames, say what you will, are starting to play a little bit better. So now all of a sudden, some of these talks that at first were looking like they were imminent are now maybe on hold while the Flames figure out what they are, which is obviously a little bit frustrating if you're a guy like Treliving trying to make a move, because you know what the Leafs have up front and you know what they need on the back end. They need a bit of size. They need that right shot D-man that they've been looking for a while. John Klingberg didn't work out. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and I really do think, Steele, any of those pieces on the top of that list, I know Elias Lindholm doesn't make any sense. I don't think we're talking about him to the Leafs. But any three of those D-men, because Noah Hanifin has been rumored to be on the move too in a big way, they all go up a notch in fantasy value if they're playing in the top four in Toronto, just based on offensive metrics. That's my take on it. So that's why we're going to continue to take a look at these teams that need to make a trade, because usually when that happens, value pops or value decreases. So we're breaking it all down. Today's episode, though, my friends, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Steele, I'm loving this one. That's $150 if your squad wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, Steele and I's favorite, same-game parlays, and a lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
In the Canada Dry comfort zone, there's no such thing as holiday stress. Sure, your in-laws keep their thermostat at 84, and you have to sleep on that 50-year-old couch with the mystery lump in the middle every time you visit. But you're too busy relaxing in the refreshing world of Canada Dry to notice.
Is this memory foam?
Absolutely. Canada Dry. Sip into your comfort zone.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Big news from Locked On. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every day. Continue to hit the subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We do really appreciate all the feedback and comments we get on the YouTube channel and on Twitter as well. So continue doing so. We really do appreciate it. Continuing on these 3 teams or 2 more teams from now that really need to make a trade or make a change moving forward for the rest of the remainder of the season. But we'll get to big time bets at the end of the episode. You and I actually have one of the same teams. So we'll save that to discuss at the very end as the last one. I'll kick off with another Canadian team, though. I know you've got one out west. I'm, going right down from or going up from Calgary over to Edmonton. Yeah. And clearly, it's an obvious statement. Everyone knows this at this point.
Yes.
The Edmonton Oilers need to trade for a goaltender.
Yeah.
I understand they send Jack Campbell down to the AHL.
Yeah.
The first 3 starts were brutal. I think he put up a shutout in his fourth or fifth game, but not even so. If I were the Edmonton Oilers, I do not want Jack Campbell brought back up. I think Stuart Skinner, we've talked about him over the last year and a half.
A lot, yeah.
I wasn't quite ready to say that he was going to be that guy. I thought so maybe this year. He hasn't been. I think he's more fit in to be a backup goaltender and learn from a veteran presence in the blue paint. The Edmonton Oilers need to trade for a starting goaltender if they want any chance to make the playoffs, let alone win a Stanley Cup this year. That's a big, big thing that they need to do. And unfortunately, you might have to move on from someone that you've invested time into. Again, I know Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' name's been out there, potentially going to Boston. Again, all rumors and speculation. But something to keep an eye on, because they're not going to win with Stuart Skinner or Jack Campbell or Calvin Pickard, whoever's in the crease.
Right now, definitely not. And look, I was ready to say Stuart Skinner. He looked amazing last year. And small sample size. I've learned my lesson here. I'm not actually fully ready to give up on him in the NHL, not even close yet.
No, not to give up, but a backup for now.
For sure. And he clearly should have been honing his craft as the number 2 guy, not taking the load. Ideally, and I think this is what the Edmonton Oilers were hoping for, and we don't need to talk about this because everyone knows it, was Jack Campbell was going to be that guy and Stuart Skinner was going to come in as that backup. They had to go the other way. They had to go with Skinner because Jack Campbell has looked like an absolute ghost of what he used to be. La, 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 la. There's goalies out there. They're kicking tires on any goalie with a pulse steel because they can't afford to squander what's going on with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, even though they have been struggling. They are arguably the 2 best players on the planet, and they were right there the last couple of seasons knocking on the door in the Western Conference, and you can't squander any more of this time. So guys on this list, including Jake Allen, who's there in that graphic, and Sam Montembeault on the Montreal Canadiens, make a lot of sense. If I'm the Canadiens, I probably want to tie myself to at least one of the young goalies in Caden Primo and Sam Montembeault. So I would assume it's Jake Allen who they probably want to let go of. I don't know if that's really the answer in Edmonton, but you can't help but feel that might be better than what they already have right now going on. Steele, another Canadian team. Wait, what's the last team that we have that's the same? Is it the Islanders or is it the Canucks?
It's the Islanders. It's the Islanders.
So let me just then talk about the Vancouver Canucks, because when you look at teams that need to make a trade, when I'm talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's to fill holes. It's to address that they're squandering good opportunities to win games. It's been their MO. Go up a couple and blow it. Defense is letting way too many shots on net. They're sloppy in their own end. That's been clear. The Vancouver Canucks are 15-7-1 Steele. They need to make a move to take them over the top. All of a sudden, this team is right there within striking distance, only 1 point back of the Vegas Golden Knights. We have to pay attention to what's going on here. And the GM in Vancouver just came out yesterday and said he's looking to address a little bit of depth on the blue line because they have been a little bit banged up. And I know it was like Ethan Bear and a couple of the other depth pieces that they signed in the offseason haven't been able to play. Who's it? Carson Soucy as well has been hurt.
He's injured,
So these pieces are obviously ones that they want to try and bolster the blue line for what's been a beast mode season, Steele. So different angles for needs to make a trade. But I think given how good Vancouver has been and how close they are to really seriously making this a legitimate thing this season, I think they're one of those teams that need to make a move to take them over the top.
Yeah, they've been overachieving with some of these guys that they've acquired on the blue line. Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are just, off to the races in this Norris Trophy race to begin this season. Look at Philip Ronek at number 3 amongst defensemen with points this season. 23 points. He's been a huge addition.
Your boy was on him early.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. He's been an absolute stud for the Vancouver Canucks, but I agree with you. They do need to make 1, maybe 2 additions to both the bottom 6 and the D pairings in the bottom 4. If they really want to set themselves for success and, be a contending team come playoff time. So completely agree with that. Let's go over to the last team. We have the same one, the New York Islanders, that need to address, need to make a change, need to address something on the roster. And maybe we'll, continue this conversation after break in a couple of minutes. But
love that.
To me, the New York Islanders, they are a playoff caliber team. And I really do believe they can make a deep playoff run. The problem is is the offense. Everybody knows this. The power play has been a little bit better. They're actually a lot better than last year.
I think they're in like eighth best.
Yeah, they were dead last year. Bo Horvat's been a huge part of that success on the power play. Yep. But they struggle with closing out games. They lead the league with 6 overtime losses this year. They can't win in regulation. When they get to extra time, they lose in overtime. They lead the league with 6 on the season. They're 29th in goals for. They're 15th worst in goals against. So even though their goaltending is strong, one of the better tandems in the league, I believe
for sure.
Sorokin's save percentage is like a 911, 912 save percentage, maybe 910, around there. Semyon Varlamov's save percentage is like a 930. The goaltenders have been fantastic this year, but they're not getting it done on the offensive side of things. I truly believe if they want to set themselves for success, if they want to set themselves up for a deep playoff run, which they've struggled with over the last couple of years, they need to trade for another star player in the top 6. And maybe star is the wrong terminology because I'm not sure if they can quite afford it. They have just under $4 million in cap space. Obviously, once they get someone off their books, that it creates more money for them. But they need someone on that second line when you have Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal on the first line. Let me just bring up the lineup combinations for the New York Islanders here.
Yeah, I have it here.
They need someone to play alongside Brock Nelson because Brock Nelson is one of their top goal scorers right there with Bo Horvat.
He's been the most consistent over the last
year.
Pierre
Engvall's been very good this year. He passes the puck. He's not a lot of goals from Engvall, but he's got the speed. He passes the puck well. They need someone on that right side. So whether it be a guy like Matt Zuccarello, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but a guy of that level of play in the NHL right now. They need someone to fill in alongside Brock Nelson. So that's where I'm at. But I truly do believe the New York Islanders could be a really good playoff team.
They have Ilya Sorokin, one of my favorite goalies of the past number of years. When you have a goalie of that caliber and actually Steele, a pretty balanced blue line. We love Noah Dobson. Yes. Ryan Pulock is solid. Romanov is solid. Scott Mayfield. Yeah, okay, it's Scott Mayfield, but he is the kind of blue liner that actually the Leafs would love to have right now. Speaking of players, that's not happening, obviously, but there you go. They have all those pieces defensively. Also, I wanted to bring up Steele. Their penalty killing unit is the second worst in the league. They're letting up way too many special team goals. And when you're letting up too many special team goals and you can't score, you're not going to win a lot of games. Also, this team has been right there. We could have fit them into the mold like this for the last handful of seasons when Noah Dobson, no offense to Noah Dobson, who's having a great year, is right there as your points leader, one back of Barzal. Usually, it's not going to go well offensively. So this team obviously has some really nice pieces, ones that I just mentioned, and so did you, but they need to make a trade. They need to bounce something into this lineup to get it going offensively. And I think once that happens, you take pressure off the back end and let them really do their thing and then watch them go. Watch us go to bets, though, baby, because it has been a rough ride this week, Steele. I see the comments. I'm seeing people giving us advice. We appreciate it. We're just here to highlight winners. That's what we're trying to do.
And we're going to highlight some winners very, very soon. I do want to mention something about the New York Islanders after the break. So we'll finish up wrap all of that up nicely with the bow. But this episode is also brought to you by the Sleeper app. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Brock Besser could score 50 goals. The New York Rangers could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on Sleeper. The group chat, team chat functionality, Flip and I are on that all the time, chirping other people, chirping each other. We really like the connection there and that functionality. Entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick on studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, McKinnon, Hellebuck, if they will record more or less on their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more on the game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your pick so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and location availability.
The Monday edition of Locked On NHL is a must-listen. Every Monday on Locked On NHL, host Gil Martin takes you to the 3 biggest NHL stories from the weekend's games with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. No national fluff. You get the real story from the Locked On experts who are with the team every day. Put it on your calendar every Monday on Locked On NHL. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, leave a follow button, and a 5-star review. Flip, before we get to big time bets, I just want to wrap up that New York Islanders conversation about the penalty kill. I think if they want to address that, and obviously they need to change things up, why not put Bo Horvat on the penalty? He was an absolute stud when he was on the penalty kill for the Vancouver Canucks, and just bringing up his stats from the last couple of seasons. He had 1 shorthanded goal last year when he joined the Islanders, 3 with the Vancouver, so 4 in total. One the year before that. He is a shorthanded juggernaut, and he does it all on the power play, special teams, even strength. So I just wanted to mention that before we get to big time bets.
An interesting point.
Yeah, but let's get over to big time bets so we can finish off with hopefully some winning picks here. I'll throw it over to you. What are your picks of the night?
Appreciate that. I also got to give a shout out to a good Welland, Ontario boy, Niagara region boy, Cal Clutterbuck, for his 1,000 games in the NHL. I believe only split between the Minnesota Wild and New York Islanders. This guy has been a grit grinder stud. Just needed to show some love to a good Niagara boy in Cal Clutterbuck. Shout out to Welland, Ontario, one time. Bet-wise steal. I got to get back this money train rolling because we were clicking along at a really nice pace there, and I'm going to keep mine short and sweet because I'm usually coming in here with all kinds of trends, angles, statistics. Number 1 here for my first bet on the money line is the Ottawa Senators, a team that has a 5-3-2 overall record in their last 10 head-to-head with Columbus, but more recently, I should say, they have wins in 4 of the last 6 against Columbus. I watched some of the Columbus game the other night when both you and I were betting on them. This team is straight up and down doo-doo, and I know that the Ottawa Senators have not exactly been a pretty piece themselves, but they have a lot more talent. And I think a lot of what's been going on with this team has not even been on the ice. It's been in the front office. It's been in the dressing room, suspensions and fines and firings and all kinds of stuff. So we haven't even seen the Ottawa Senators run out their whole full lineup. I'll stop rambling. That's my first pick steal. Senators on the money line. I just think it's the way to go, and I think it's going to be led by a big game by Brady Tkachuk. So we got Brady Tkachuk. I'm going to pair with that one. 10 goals, 5 assists for the captain so far. I want to say somehow overall disappointing, but fantasy-wise, it's not. 50 penalty minutes, 80 shots on net, his 15 points. He's such a stud. But when he leads this team, Steele, and he is such a pivotal, energetic piece, you can't help but feel that if the team's not winning, he's not succeeding. So I think you're going to see a big, big game from Brady Tkachuk. So if it's at over 1.5 anytime points, I'm still comfortable with it because I think he's going to have a big, big night. The lock of the night was the Senators on the money line. But when I go to this San Jose and Jersey game as my last one, because I'm just going to ramble off my last one quick here, Steele. This has got all the makings of an over. The New Jersey Devils have also scored 12 goals combined in their last 2 games. I got a bad feeling for whoever's in net for the Sharks. This is going to be an over. The Sharks are getting a little bit better too, Steele. So a couple goals for the Sharks, 4 or 5 for the Jersey Devils. This one's going over the total in a hurry. Those are my 3 bets, including Senators on the money line as my lock of the night.
Absolutely love the 3 picks for Friday. Only 2 games on the schedule.
Yeah.
I got a same game parlay. I'll make it super quick here. Toffoli, anytime point, Devils money line, and Hughes over 1.5 points. Hughes had a 3-point night against the Islanders. And again, I know the Sharks have been better, but like you said, it's probably going to be going over the game, over the number. Sharks have been better, but the Devils have got some talented offensive studs out there. So Hughes over 1.5 points, Devils money line into Foley anytime point. Simple as that for me. I'm just going same game parlay, keeping it simple Friday night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And again, big news from Locked On. They've launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Thank you again so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.
Make this holiday season one you'll remember forever with an engagement ring from JamesAllen.com. James Allen knows each love story is unique. That's why they make it easy to custom design engagement rings at up to half the price of a traditional jeweler. Choose from tons of conflict-free diamonds, both earth-created and lab-created. Then pick your ring setting and metal. Make your holiday engagement truly magical with 25% off at JamesAllen.com promo code LOCKEDON. That's JamesAllen.com promo code LOCKEDON.